three crypto experts on this panel. We have Ed, you already know, co-founder of Bitcoin.
Yes, Ed.
Marek, co-founder of Novera Capital and Toronto Bitcoin Week.
Blockchain.
Blockchain Week. And we have Dennis, token economic consultant, and Blades and Basket. So can I ask three gentlemen just give 1 minute intro to yourself and your business, how that relate to a blockchain?
Sure, I'll start. Hi everybody, my name is Edward Buchi. I work at Bitcoin Bay. At Bitcoin Bay, our mission is essentially to turn Toronto into a blockchain hub. That means encourage people, companies who are delving in blockchain to stay here, encourage them to find the right community, and give them pointers here and there to tell them what the community is actually looking for. We also secretly build and develop blockchain applications as well. And that's something we want to showcase with the community later in this summer.
So my name is Marek. I think many of you know me or met me. I've been around for a while. I co-founded the blockchain lab at the School of Business a couple years back. We were delivering some content there, educational content. Academic background, now I'm sort of in industry. As Victor alluded to, I'm CTO of Novera Capital. We're developing some blockchain-based products, mostly for institutions. You probably haven't really heard of us too much. Also, co-founder of Blockchain Week, as Victor mentioned. I think we share something in common with Edward in that we believe that Toronto is kind of where it's at in terms of blockchain. We've got a lot of advantages here, and just more about celebrating that, right? At least once a year, if not more. And I do some research for the Blockchain Research Institute. Put on Blockchain Revolution Global back, and some other stuff. So I'm a busy guy.
Hello everyone, my name is Denis I'm very interested in the evolution of humanity and how technology affects it. So I've been looking at technology for quite some time. I have a background in marketing and macroeconomics. I've been doing marketing for IT for the last 15 years. And in the last 2 years, I've been a host of the ThatCrypto meetup. It's a weekly meetup and a show. Everything is recorded and everything is on YouTube. You can find it if you Google ThatCrypto. So basically, my goal is to research the blockchain space, cryptocurrencies, find the practical implications of that, and educate people on how to safely interact with blockchains, how to buy Bitcoin, how to store it, and what the differences are between the fiat currencies and the traditional financial cryptocurrencies.
Thank you. So, before we going to ask questions, discuss with our panelists, I prepared 4 slides just to give an introduction to Libra, so that bring everyone to this common ground, so that we have a common background to start with. Slide 1. So, June 18, Facebook announced this project, cryptocurrency project, Libra. It is a new decentralized blockchain. Currently, it is permissioned, but they plan to move to permissionless blockchain in 5 years. It is a stablecoin. It's a global currency backed by a basket of real asset, which is funny. Traditionally, in Wall Street, real asset is generally referred to real estate infrastructure. But in this case, Facebook defined as bank deposit and the short-term government security in the currency that come from reputable, stable central bank. It is not yet.
Oh, again, sorry.
Yeah, it is a smart contract platform with a new programming language called Move, and is governed by an independent association called Libra Association. And the main reason is that they want to have serve those unbanked community and or make money transfer cheaper and easier. Here is a list of the 28 founding member of the association. I find this is very interesting.
Me too.
If you just look at this, the industry of these 28 members, you get a sense where Libra is going to. Clearly, you know from this, there's an 8 marketplace, 8 e-commerce company joined it. Clearly show that the stablecoin will use for online payment. Not surprisingly, there's a 5 payment company also joined it. There's a 5 venture capital firm also part of the association, including 2 of the top venture firm from Silicon Valley. That tells me is that this organization, this Libra, has to be profitable. Otherwise, the venture firm would not come in, right? There's also non-profit and also some telecom company, and plus some blockchain company there.
Can you speak to the inclusion of Visa and MasterCard?
Yeah, this specifically, why? Do you know why they're there?
Okay. Can we go
Or
back?
is that
We also have a Q&A after.
Okay.
the
Oh, afterwards, okay, all right,
So
maybe do that.
maybe we'll do that after. Okay.
Oh, okay, so I was going to go through them and why their importance of each.
It's setting up the stage.
Copy that.
Yeah.
Copy that.
After the announcement, government reaction was swift. Across the globe, from US to UK to Germany or other part of the Europe. Here are just some interesting quote I put on the slide. You can see the first one probably from Maxim Walter, from the most interesting quote. I will read out to you. We just cannot allow them to go to Switzerland with all its associates and begin to compete with the dollar. And last week, 4 other U.S. lawmakers joined. Maxim Walter wrote a letter to Facebook to tell them to stop, develop Libra immediately.
Okay.
Yeah. How's the market react to this news? Let's look at the Bitcoin price. Since the announcement, Bitcoin has gone up by 30%. How about Facebook stock? Since the announcement, Facebook stock has gone up by 3.2%, outperformed the Nasdaq index.
Sorry, Victor, for the crypto people here, that's a big deal in the stock market.
Yes,
3%.
3% for less than 3 weeks is pretty big deal.
That's not a, no. That's not true.
For the last 10 years, the S&P 500, the annual return was only 12%. So, clearly you can see that you cannot say for sure that Facebook, the announcement caused the increase of this price, but at least you can infer that there's no negative reaction to this price. So that's a few slides. Let's bring everyone to the common ground, then we start our question with our panelists. So I'd like to ask the panel first, can you describe what's the, a lot of people, when they think about Libra, they think about Bitcoin. They also think about stablecoin, because Libra is a stablecoin. We already have a few stablecoin, for example, Tether, for example, Gemini dollar, they all backed by US dollars. How Libra differ or similar to Bitcoin and those stablecoins?
Well, first off, if to introduce people to the concept of stablecoins, it's just basically stablecoins came from an era where Bitcoin was always promoting itself as a currency, but it was too volatile. right? So it can't be a currency. So cryptocurrencies have been designed recently to become stable. The price doesn't go crazy enough, and you do that by having an asset like fiat, like American dollars backed by it. It's in the white paper, but Libra coin, they want to supposedly back it with US dollars, Japanese yen, and something interesting that I've never seen in other stable coins, which is short-term US securities. So
As in treasuries?
Probably
securities is what they basically said. So maybe bonds and stuff like that, but yeah.
Probably T-bills.
Right, treasuries,
That's
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, so, I think we're gonna get into the permission versus permissionless nature, later. I think that this is, Libra in general, the announcement is really great for crypto. I mean, it's raising awareness, as Victor alluded to earlier. Certainly, a major corporation like Facebook coming out with cryptocurrency and focusing on that really legitimizes it in the eyes of many institutions, I would say. It is interesting that there are sort of two tiers to the system because of its permission nature. There's, the stable coin that, folks will use to do a lot of commerce, and, there's sort of almost also an investment tier, right, where, those major companies, those founding companies you mentioned earlier, Victor, will be staking large amounts of fiat currency in order to become validators on the network, right? And they're going to presumably earn. So to your earlier question of perhaps why MasterCard and Visa are interested in this kind of project. One, people that have used cryptocurrencies realize that in a lot of ways it's more convenient than credit cards, and potentially that can be argued, right? But there's, for example, there's no chargebacks, right, for a vendor. So I know that they've been exploring crypto or dipping their toes in crypto and blockchain for a while.
They're charging each person to hold a note $1 million.
10 million.
10 million,
as far as I
sorry.
know.
So when you hold a node, you have access to a lot of information.
A lot of data, yeah.
So that's why, well, we'll get into that.
Yeah,
right?
sure. I love to speculate about that stuff
No,
as
I'm
well.
not gonna speculate, I'll just put out fact.
Yeah.
There's lots of facts.
So, just to sort of, put a, there's been a lot of speculation as to why Facebook is doing this, for that matter, right? A lot of conspiracy theories. There's Gemini, which the Winklevoss twins launched, right? They have a long history with Mark Zuckerberg, and then now Libra, another zodiac symbol. I personally had a chance to talk to Facebook, some people high up executives in Facebook around the year 2011. I know they were very genuinely interested in doing payments, even back then, right? That was about 8 years ago. And they were getting all kinds of roadblocks in the US, which, as Victor pointed out, they are still getting, but this is a chance for them to do it in some of their larger overseas markets. But interestingly, apparently not in India, right, which is a big market for them, not in China because they're not in China, and not in the US because of these reasons, and possibly also not in Europe. So you'll be curious where, I've said before during Toronto Blockchain Week, I'll close in a minute, I don't want to monopolize your time, remark that, the revolution, if you will, the crypto revolution is not going to happen in very stable places like Canada, the US, right, and so forth. It's going to happen, in countries which are unstable and don't have access to banking and don't have access to these basic services. So I think, legitimately, I think that's where they're targeting.
Is Libra based on G7 nations?
No, it's not.
Not at all.
They're holding some of their currencies in reserve, but I think that's just kind of maybe not
Is that the asset
asset back.
behind the token?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so a couple of thoughts. So if you compare Libra and Bitcoin, so obviously the Facebook team spent a lot of time, probably a year, of analyzing everything that's in crypto space, in Bitcoin and Ethereum and all the consensus protocols, and how to solve the speed problem and all this stuff. And you can say that it's a cryptocurrency because it uses cryptography. However, I have questions what's going to happen if people start losing their keys. So then they will have more assets than the circulating coins, for example. Or will it be possible to recover your wallet through some kind of identification or something like that? That's not pure cryptocurrency, not permissionless. That is. In terms of stable coins, it's also an interesting concept because stable against what? It's a basket of currencies. Each currency has a slightly volatile because it's a floating market rate, and then your Libra is going to be just extra currency, and you have to follow this foreign exchange rate in every country, and governments can devalue their local currencies, then the Libra is going to change the value. Yeah, so that's quite an interesting concept, and not clear to me right
I
now.
remember, Victor, you and I were in a workshop where we started arguing about what does stable even mean, right? I think when we say stable coin, it means stable relative to other cryptos, not relative to fiat. But I agree, everything's relative as far as permissionless, decentralized, those are all relative terms.
Like all the other stable coins, they are pegged to the value of a certain national currency. Usually it's the US dollar, but the Libra is not pegged to anything.
The thing about stable coins is like they're designed to be used by people, right? And the interesting thing about this stable coin is that it's made by a major corporation. Historically, since 2011, we've seen decentralized groups like Ethereum, the OG since 2011, Satoshi Nakamoto since way back. We all know who he is. These people pioneered blockchains, and then along the way, banks have secretly started their own blockchain projects and their own stablecoins. But this is the first time we have a major corporation, and they have something new that these other teams don't have. They have armies of UX teams whose sole job is to make it very easy for users to use their product. So I'm excited for that in the coming months because we're going to be seeing exciting new wallets coming up, exciting new tactics for taking care of private keys. If they choose, and I'm saying the Libra Council, not Facebook, if the Libra Council chooses to keep Libra decentralized. And
Can you expand on the difference between those two?
Libra.
Libra and the
Facebook?
Facebook Council? Yes.
Okay, so if you read the white paper, Facebook has erased their name from it. They don't want to headline themselves. They're headlining this entity called the Libra Association, made up of other companies, like the things that we noticed, the eBays, the Lyfts, the Stripes, and they also put themselves in. I feel it's a play to say that they're not wholly responsible for it. There's an opportunity for this council to decide.
Could it be because of their reputation right now? Could it be that, their reputation is really
I
bad?
think it's more of a regulatory thing. I think there's enough moving parts there where they can somehow flow around regulations in at least a lot of jurisdictions, enough jurisdictions to launch. I suspect that's a thing.
And it's easy to do it in a group, and easy to do it by basing your council or your association in Geneva. In this association, I just want to make a clear distinction. There is a governing council, right, of few key companies. These key companies, right, are the validator nodes in Libra's blockchain.
Were they elected?
I don't know what the process is.
The first round, the first round was more of a nominated by Facebook, talk to Facebook.
Friends and family kind of.
Yeah.
So
in the future, it will be probably voted by them.
Yeah, they said that there's plans to sort of make it permissionless in the future and make it more open.
Yeah.
But it's sort of unprecedented for projects to become more open and more permissionless.
So they don't want their name on it, but yet they picked and choose who is going to be running the Libra Council.
The first round.
But my point is they don't want their name on it, but they picked.
They're
the
separating
first
themselves.
group. So that means they have a very strong influence in Libra.
Absolutely.
Okay, so then that means Libra is Facebook.
No, they try to distance themselves once it's launched.
Okay.
They will be one.
Let them go. Let them go.
They aim to have 100 members, around 100 members in the Libra Association, and each member only have one vote, including Facebook. Means that they one out of 100 vote. The reason they want to do that is that they want to, they describe Libra blockchain as a public good, global, open to everyone, to anyone.
They mentioned how they plan to recruit the other 79 members. Is it going to be a public bid? Is it going to be another friends and family?
It's yet to be seen, really, right? So like if they it's in their interest. If they're saying they're decentralized, their process of getting people into this association who decides where Libra is going to go, that has to be like pretty democratic and decentralized too.
So like EO, so they're gonna have a voting system, you think, in their wallet?
Not for ordinary users, right?
No, users have no
For
vote,
people
right.
in the association, they
Only
would
the-
vote. Presumably, it looks
So
like a.
So Facebook's a
Yeah.
public utility, and then they're gonna attach themselves with a nonprofit group. So shouldn't the people who are in a public utility and using it have a right to vote? Right, I'm just saying, would
There's
you agree
what's
with
right,
that?
and then there's what's
Okay,
just.
so I'm just
and then
asking you
there's-
as a professional, would you think that would be a right thing to do on the part of Facebook?
I mean,
You said it was
look,
non-profit.
No, Libra's a nonprofit.
I mean, look, I've been called a Bitcoin maximalist before, right? For the reason that,
Yeah,
I believe,
I just wanna know what you
in
think.
these sort of principles. To answer what I think, right? I mean, I would like things to look more like perhaps Bitcoin, right? Than a consortium blockchain, right? So yes, long way around that, yes.
So you would prefer that. So with all of what Facebook's going through, they go and pick these members, okay? They've already have a bad track record already. So they're gonna pick these members for a closed blockchain to decide what to do on a public forum. Does that even make sense?
Well, at the beginning, you have to put it, but there's no
It's not gonna happen.
election
Yeah.
yet.
I mean, history will say how it plays out kind of thing, right? But I mean, if they approach this legitimate goal of, enabling the unbanked of the world, right, to actually do some commerce, I think history will be the judge of whether that was a net good or whether, you alluded to the data play of being, having data hooks in everybody's transactions, whether that will be seen as, the greater evil.
But they are paid, but the reality is they're paying for this note, right? Like that's what you just alluded to.
Those stakeholders,
Right, they're playing the
money
stakeholders, look,
stakeholders, yeah.
and as we go on, but I'd like to just, throw my theory, and which is pretty much based on the track record that Facebook has been going through for the last, 3 years right now, with selling data, et cetera, et cetera.
Another discussion.
Let's maybe come back to
Yeah.
another question. We'll take questions
Another
after.
discussion, another question.
Yeah.
Good question.
Let's move on a little bit. So, in the Libra white paper, it says the Libra blockchain will be open to everyone, any customer, developer, or business that can use Libra network. When I read this, it sounds like it's very open, very global. But we know in Bitcoin or Ethereum, when we say open, we mean permissionless and censorship resistant. As you know, US dollar has been oftenly used by the US government to sanction certain country, certain entities. So I would like to ask the panel, how much censorship resistant do you think Libra will be? I know that the on-ramp or off-ramp will require typically KYC, know your customer, and anti-money laundering. But let's say I already own the Libra, already on the network. Can I send money to country that has been sanctioned by US? What do you think?
Okay, so like under white paper, their ultimate mission, whether they achieve it or not, is to build a infrastructure for the global population to be part of the digital economy. I see a lot of roadblocks from government from stopping them, right? And I think the best way around that for them is to, one, be part of a council so that they're if I were them, right?
Yeah.
One, be part of a council so it's not solely their responsibility. Two, they'd have to build their blockchain in such a way that's decentralized. So even if they were to be cut out, this blockchain could still continue. And so as the coins and potentially the services. Like when it comes to how decentralized, I have no idea because it's too early. I haven't seen things from them yet.
Yeah, for those reasons, I mean, if you see the companies that were listed up there, I mean, most of them would suffer greatly if they were subject to US sanctions. So I strongly suspect that they wouldn't go out on a limb perhaps to be, I guess, again, that's one of those things we'll see how things play out in reality versus the promise sort of thing. I am reminded of, some really clever Twitter content, right, which we showed out there, it was a joke that showed, your posting or your transaction has violated community standards, so your wallet's been shut down for 3 days or something like this, right? I'm a little bit cynical, I guess, after being around for a while, but, I could easily foresee something like that happening. Right, so I would say, in practice, it won't be very censorship resistant, and so forth. But after looking at it, right, people also accuse it of not being decentralized and so forth. But if you look, down the top 15 or even the top 10 coins on CoinMarketCap, I can probably point at some cryptos or coins or whatever that are more centralized than at least what Libra claims to be, right? So it's, again, those are very hand-wavy answers, right? But like I said, these aren't absolute concepts of decentralization and fairness and censorship resistance.
So Facebook or Libra Foundation or whatever entity is behind this coin is actually an entity, and it has an address in Switzerland, the US, or any other country, which means they have to comply with local regulations and the US regulations, because it's all over the world. It's enforced all over the world. And they will have to ban certain countries from transactions. They will have to provide data on certain individuals and transactions. They have to ban certain people from using their money. So no, it's not decentralized, it's not censorship resistant. Decentralized maybe because it has 100 different nodes, but doesn't mean that everyone will be able to use it. And by design, the coin is designed that it has backing of the real fiat money. That means there should be an entity keeping this money and issuing coins. It will never be decentralized unless they're going the way the US dollar went. First it was back to the gold, and Libra is back to like a basket of currencies. I don't know, 20 years from now they decide to just start the emission of the Libra without any fiat behind it. This way, maybe.
I think you're raising a good point. Is like, I love to talk about this stuff. It's exciting. I think it is really big news for crypto. But the reality is, like, which crypto project ended up looking like the white paper? Anybody think of one? I can.
I can. ZR Coin.
Which one?
ZR Coin. He's on Waves.
Okay.
ZRC.
I've been educated then. I don't know. I'll read that one and see how close. I would say that would probably be the exception, right? The majority haven't.
They've got the factory up.
Most haven't. So I would say that, well, Bitcoin looks a lot different than what the white paper says if you look at it now, right? That's why ostensibly Satoshi's position exists. The point I'm trying to make in a roundabout way, right, is that however this thing plays out, it's going to go through changes between now and launch. I mean, if you look at all the talk about it and regulatory resistance to it, it will have to evolve to launch.
But even if they say we're not going to launch in India or China, it means they just block those countries. It's not permissionless. It's not censorship resistant. It's not open. So.
I want to add some remarks to these statements. We struggle in the crypto community to scale blockchains, not technologically, but also in the sense of how do you deal with regulation, how do you deal with scaling to other countries, right? How do you make cryptocurrency accessible in countries where people are illiterate, right? The exciting thing about Facebook is basically, in the crypto space, if you can imagine, we're in the Antarctic right now. Where we need to go is on the other side of all those ice, right? The ice being government regulation, all the problems we have in crypto. Facebook is that icebreaker. Everybody in this community, if they want to start their own crypto projects, can follow this icebreaker through this long, huge sheet of ice. We'll see them make mistakes. We'll see them make really good ideas, and they'll essentially show us points here and there where we can actually build a proper blockchain global company.
To Dennis's point, so are you suggesting that this might look like going back to the gold standard and poses the same risk which was posed by the Big Depression?
Could you clarify?
So
They're talking about?
the gold standard, where the governments mint the currencies based on the amount of gold that they have. And the big depression was the phase when there was a depression and people started cashing out for their money, for the gold. So they were kind of depleting the resources and the government did not have more gold to print more money. So they started printing it out of thin air, and that's kind of like, it was all messed up. So that's why US went back from the gold standard to something else. So does this look like, going back to the same problems that we faced back then?
Well, it looks to me so. First, the new currency needs to be back to something, because if the dollar wasn't back to gold, so why would people start using it in the first place? But then people got used to the dollar, and then there was no gold needed to back it up. So maybe it's going to happen. If it doesn't happen, it will never be decentralized. So there will be an entity keeping fiat currencies and managing the investments and issuing new coins like Libra coins and destroying them.
So with all the regulatory hurdles that we see, it will be a lot, because based on the response of Congress and others and governments, how do you see this affecting crypto? Sort of in the background, getting acceptance while Facebook is facing all these problems, or crypto being in the face of people learning about it. How do you see that affecting Bitcoin, Ethereum, and others?
I guess I could take that one. As you alluded to, in the short term, it is going to raise awareness, but also raising awareness of, cryptocurrency to regulators. As Victor pointed out, drawing a big target on crypto for regulation. If you've been listening to what the Bitcoin camp's been saying for many years, they've been waiting for this time for a long time. I guess we're going to really see which projects are really decentralized and censorship resistant, and all these things. This sort of crucible, you can imagine, right? Regulatory crucible coming.
And to add to Marek's point, I know a lot of blockchain companies right now, especially big ones like Cardano. People can't develop on those yet because there's not a lot of blockchain developer tools to start building your app, right? And where the crypto community can benefit from is these tools are going to be innovated by Facebook, because Facebook needs to build their stuff. And they're going to encourage people to build on their stuff. So they're going to be building these tools. And the crypto community can copy from them. I have some suspicion that some of these tools Facebook's making will be open source too. So
if you look at Venezuela, for example, after the government launched petrol, cryptocurrency, the usage of Bitcoin went up because they educated the people.
Well, they had Monero there before. They were getting airdrops for a long time, for like 2 years.
I met some people from,
And that's education.
met some folks from Venezuela, and they basically said, that Bitcoin is, the only one that people actually.
So Facebook said that they want to transition this blockchain from permissioned to permissionless in 5 years. But remember, there has been never a permissionless blockchain transition to permissionless blockchain before. Some people already raised some doubt, including people at the Coin Center in the US, which you probably heard. Coin Center is an advocacy group for the crypto community. So they raised two concerns. One is that if Libra become very popular and very profitable, what's the economic incentive for those Libra association members to keep up their privilege? Because right now you have privilege because you are the one who can run the validation node. Second issue they raised is a Libra reserve. So to become a validate nodes operator, you have to invest at least $10 million US, and those money will put in the reserve to back up the Libra token issue. In a bank, those reserves have to have a name. Somebody has to belong to. So if you want to become permissionless, who is owning this? So those are some of the issues, some of the doubt expressed by the industry expert. What do you guys think? Do you think it's possible do you believe it's possible to migrate from permissioned blockchain to permissionless blockchain?
I mean, I guess anything is possible in a sense, right? In a very limited sense of the word. Is it likely? Is it easy? I suspect not, right? But I mean, you could imagine some future scenario where they could move to a what do they call it, delegated proof of stake type scenario, right? Or just plain old proof of stake scenario, right? With either a fork or just agreement of the foundation. You have to really look at incentives, right? Are they going to be incentivized, to your point, in order to do so, right? I think it's too early to really see any of those answers. That's my view.
So actually what they say, so they want to move to proof of stake, and all the early investors that pay $10 million, they will get tokens representing this investment. So they will stake those tokens and they will collect the transaction fees. That's the incentive of running a node in the proof of stake. This is how it works. However, the question still remains, like, what you're going to do with issuance, Libra. Like, someone has to move fiat to the bank account, someone has to manage the reserve. Maybe that's what they're saying. In 5 years there will be no reserve there. Yeah, they start just issuing our own token, and if you want to do it in Libra, you continue using it. If not, then not.
So you say we'll move away from backed by a real asset. They just issue just like
Ripple,
like Ripple.
I don't see how it can be decentralized if they don't move from the.
So to the point of people like being, skeptical of Libra becoming decentralized, I have to say first that as a crypto community, we're actually also very jaded with other blockchain projects too. Like, for example, Cardano has been about for a while. They wanted to be decentralized. It's not happened yet. There are some blockchains that wanted to move to proof of stake since 2011 and haven't done that. We're still in 2019 now. And to the point of Libra being permissionless, right? Like, think about it, guys. They want to build a global infrastructure for everybody, right? And if it is centralized, if it's permission, right? This association has to be is liable, right, for all the data that they're taking care of. It's in their best interest not to take care of it, to make it decentralized, to make people take care of their own stuff. If there's a scandal that happens at a global scale and it affects this association, it will be such bad news. So my inclination is, yes, it could take a long time, but it has to be in their best interest to move into a permissionless state.
I'm clearly more jaded than you. I feel that whatever deal they're currently getting now, what's being promised, that's not being published in the public space. I'm sure it's a really juicy fruit. Like for example, the data play that we used earlier. Right? It's tough to know what's going on about it.
So if you think, what was the motivation for Facebook to launch Libra in the first place? So the Facebook is actually growing right now and at unprecedented rates, like 25% per year. And for the company of this size, it's like unheard of. But it's slowing down, and they're projecting that the spread, or like the margin, the profit margin will get thinner because they're hiring more people for censorship actually, to just go through the content, and introducing the currency in their like 2.5 billion ecosystem can boost the usage of their platform as a marketplace. And if you think like Libra is kind of closed loop, you need the exchanges to get in and out, the same as Bitcoin. It's very difficult to use Bitcoin because you have to get in fiat, from fiat and into fiat. However, the benefit of Libra is more or less stable. It's more stable than Bitcoin, and businesses will be able to use it safely. So if you're a business, it's much easier for you to transact in Libra cross-border. Maybe not within Canada, we have MasterCard.
I'll just add another comment. As far as motivations, I've been in tech for a while, and it seems to me that at the edge there's cracks in this way that developers get revenue from their users. Right now, a lot of it's ad driven. Right, like you pay $0 for a new app, right, and you're pushed ads instead. Right. There's been rumors, right, that the bottom is going to eventually fall out of the online ad market because it's a lot of bots that are generating these clicks and things. And this is actually a way for Facebook to actually continue getting revenue from the thousands or millions of app developers and app users within the ecosystem, right? So I mean, I think that the means of payment for apps is in addition to physical goods, which I think you were alluding to, is a big part of that.
I want to share one quick idea. One thing that people sometimes overlook. This is going to be going out to developing countries where there's no necessarily infrastructure for finance. I come from the Philippines, and over there, people don't have, they don't pay monthly, they pay prepaid, right? And guess who makes it easy to pay these prepaid plans? Facebook. You pay a prepaid plan, and then you immediately have Facebook on your phone as part of your data plan, right? So like, I'm speculating here. Imagine that rail as a way for people in developing countries to have Libra crypto.
But that could also destroy their economy too, because not every country needs to be in a digitalized situation. You go to Africa, it's a cash-based system. They don't have a lot of things going on. So, I mean, sometimes we also have to think that when we go to these third world countries, as you say, third world, right? Their system of money, money economy is a lot different than us in the I guess developed world, right? So sometimes we got to think ahead, because you go to Africa, they have a cash-based system. They also got 2% low unemployment. We have high employment. We have all this technology.
I have a question of the three brains on the bar here.
I'll try to answer.
When we talk about Libra and all the things that Facebook and all these companies are doing, is there a possibility that this platform could bring in the unbanked to the rest of
I think we said
society?
that earlier. Yeah, we mentioned that earlier.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, is that hopefully the motivation of all these companies getting involved, that they can bring the unbanked into the rest of society, give them the opportunity to use a currency of some note that's a G7
Agreed.
note?
It's more consumers, right? It's more transaction fees, even for Visa and MasterCard. So yes,
I think that's probably the play. That's potential.
I think we should move on.
Well, actually, the thing is, with banking the unbanked, why are they unbanked in the first place? There are like three different options, because there are no banks in the area. They don't have an ID, or they don't have an address. If they don't have an ID or an address, how are they going to go through the KYC for using the Libra? Libra is just another big bank, so they can't unbank the bank they're unbanked. Unless...
So that's not a blockchain. You're saying it's not a blockchain based. So identity.
So basically, they're acting as a bank. They're turning as a quasi-bank. That's really what you're saying, right? Sorry, that's what you're saying. It's basically a quasi-bank.
Yes, basically, they should go through KYC. They should comply with AML. People cannot transact.
So if you go to like the sub-Sahara, these people who live in like their tribal ways, and now they have like a cell phone and they can pay for whatever. Is that what you're saying, unbanked? Because I mean, anybody can really, like if you go to places, even third world countries, as you guys say, because I've been to Venezuela, I've been to a lot of these places, they still have banks. You can still get a bank account.
there are a lot of folks that are unbanked.
No, understandable, but there's a reason why they're unbanked. Maybe they're in a tribal situation, or maybe they're in a different kind of community. I'm just saying.
The next session, next part, I want to talk a little bit about adoption and how that affecting fiat currencies, the national currency. As you know, US dollar effectively is a de facto global currency for central bank reserve, for settlement of trade. If US dollar, if Libra was launched, how do you think how would that affect the US dollars, its status or the role as a global currency?
US dollar is a weapon of the United States as a global dominant country or entity. So like with a switch of a button, they can block any countries from financial transactions, any companies or individuals. They're like a list of of blacklisted people and entities on their website that you can search and check if you are allowed to send the money to those people, and actually it's illegal for you to send them. So with Libra like out there, so people will start using it and circumvent the sanctions, which is not favorable for the United States. And if you remember, Brett Sherwood from the Congress was talking exactly like this about Bitcoin and what's the use of sanctions on Iran if Iran can start using Bitcoin. That's why all the cryptocurrencies should be banned. That's why I think that Facebook should comply with the US regulation. That's why it will never be open and
But
permission.
they're already breaking the regulations. I don't know why you guys are so like thinking that they're going to follow the regulations when they've been breaking regulations for the
Because they are
last
a
3-4 years.
entity, it's a company.
Incorporated in the US, like Mark Zuckerberg can be put in jail, right? So they do have some leverage over folks.
And they care about increasing profits, not the banking.
Okay,
Next question.
next question. So we know U.S. dollar probably very likely will be part of the the basket back the Libra. How about Chinese yuan? and let's assume they didn't pick Chinese yuan. It's not part of the. China and Russia has a lot of political incentive and economic incentive to move away their dependence on the US dollar. For example, recently China and Russia signed an agreement to increase their trade settlement from use local national currency from 10% to 50%. That's the agreement. So they want to move away from US dollar as a settlement of trade. Do you believe that China, assume that Chinese yuan is not in the basket, do you believe that China will prefer use Libra over US dollar in terms of settlement of trade?
I'm not going to assume what their ambitions are.
That's also out of my swim lane. U.S.-China relations, not my swim lane.
That's your secretary questions, man.
Well, I mean, they can introduce their own coin. Why do they need to choose something from the United States only from the Sweden?
That's a very good question. That's a very good answer.
I'm from China, so the central bank has already confirmed they are going to issue their fiat digital currency. So I believe that will be the first priority for the government to use those type of money. And yet, you are right, they are trying to stay away from US dollar. So may not buy Libra, probably buy their own fiat digital currency.
Let's assume that, I know that China wants to issue the currency, but for international trade, let's say you trade with a country, say in Africa. I know China is very active trade in Africa. If the African country say, no, I don't want to take Chinese yuan, would you think they will prefer US dollar or do you prefer Libra in this case?
I think they prefer
Is
gold.
that an absence of G7 country currencies? Your question?
No, the G7 country, you will have to pick one of them.
Well, that's what I mean. Is that an absence of those? You're saying pick one or the other?
Okay, so assume you only have two choices, because the US dollar is the most common used trade settlement.
I would say that would be the US dollar because
So would I.
China is the largest holder of the US
Treasuries.
bonds. So,
Yes.
they don't own any Facebook stocks. So I would say they prefer US dollar over Facebook.
Transfer.
Okay.
Good point.
What if Chinese yuan was in the basket that back up the Libra? Would they prefer Libra or US dollar?
Bitcoin was in the basket.
Yeah, there you go. I like that. Crypto, here.
They should put Bitcoin and Ethereum in the basket.
There's some upside in there. Yeah.
That's the next Bitcoin grade index coming up.
Governments, for retail consumers, so governments.
They pick the Japanese yen.
The yen is in the basket.
Well,
The yen is in the
well,
basket.
what if WeChat is your own cryptocurrency? And right now, there is a quasi body producing a cryptocurrency that you have some backing. Somebody is talking about is diving cryptocurrency. They have some blessing sort of for that.
But look, I mean, Facebook isn't the first company, corporation to introduce their own crypto, right? Kick kind of already did it a while back, and then they backtracked, and now I saw that the guy, did anybody see it? Guys on a panel talking about how many users they have for Kin or whatever. Anyway, things change very fast in this space. You know,
And
possible.
like to your question, your question is basically asking like if governments would decide to use Libra. But the thing is, Libra was not meant for governments to settle things. It's really meant for people who live all over the world who don't necessarily have banks to transact. I feel the financial products that banks are going to come up with are totally tailor-made for governments, because governments are on their butts more than Libra for
Crypto
now.
space to get away from the banks. That's what I thought. How would the crypto space get away from the banks?
Just based on Edward's question, so how big would you guys say the Libra will impact the entire cryptocurrency landscape, given the financial capabilities of Libra Foundation and the customer base of Facebook?
Like how will it impact? Like
How big the impact will be? Because for Facebook, they have billions of customers already. They probably can rewrite the entire landscape of the
So, but look, I mean, sorry, John, but like, one is Libra won't be at first available to many of their largest customer bases, India being one.
maybe a few years, right?
Yeah, anything can change in time, right? Agreed. 100% not financial advice, right? But, you know, I could see Libra becoming like a top 10, possibly even top 3, top 2, you know, cryptocurrency because of the reasons you
But
mentioned.
it's not going to
right?
be trading on an exchange. It's only within its
We
ecosystem.
don't know.
No, but it said it in the white paper. It's only trading in its ecosystem.
I want to
For
see.
now, though.
I want to see their wallets and how they make it easy for people all over the world to like see it, and then come back to me and I'll tell you how big of an impact.
Actually, I don't want to jump on the exchange part because it's a stable coin. What happens is you have Coinbase and all these exchanges buying in. Instead of using USD, Tether, or any of those to settle trades, they can use Libra to settle the transactions.
But that's only in
exchange.
Coinbase, not in like Polymex, it's not in like Bitrex, not in any of those.
Sure,
So
we can
that's-
still calculate a market cap for it,
so-
right?
so-
How much there is. It's-
And usually,
That's what I meant.
usually you use a stable coin when you're trading in and out of Bitcoin. A stable coin, when you guys are talking about, it's just a
So
token.
you have to look at the market that Facebook is looking at. You're looking at a small market size, it's crypto. Facebook is not looking at crypto, it's looking at 1.5 billion people that it has in the Facebook network, plus globally all the other networks are there. So if you basically close your mind to the crypto space, you're gonna miss the big picture.
I'm not missing anything, I know.
So the big picture is, what happens is that the move that Facebook is doing, the Libra, whether it's a stable coin or whatnot, and all these other companies are gonna come into it, is this. You're gonna have people introduced into the space, and basically look at China and how payment systems
Come in the front, how many come in the front?
how payment
Sit here,
systems
Leo.
Come in
how
front,
payment
Leo.
systems are made. Your model is like, you have people using Alipay, WeChat Pay, and all those. That is what basically Facebook is looking to replicate, but it's being done in Asia already. So the scope of growth, right now as it is in the Western world, Facebook is the first to come out of the chute, but the model is there. And all these exchanges, in order to settle, it'll be easier if everybody's using Libra for them to settle transactions via Libra than say USD Tether or any of these other stable coins that everybody's.
Why, sorry.
Based
why-
on
yeah,
what you're
sorry.
saying, based
Why,
on
sorry,
source.
no, hold on, why is it not USD Tether? I mean, they have 75% of, I mean, everybody's up in arms about Tether, but they're backed by 75% of
Of what?
USD,
Of
whatever.
what?
Well, they say USD, they
what?
basket of USD.
See that? This is my
That's what they say.
I've always said that has been suspect because anybody that's in the capital market space, a 1-to-1 ratio of I'm going to back an asset is not true because what happens is that the guys that came up with USD Tether for the longest while have not been able to produce the assets that back their coins. Not one bit. They got caught by the New York AG saying that when pants were down, we basically loaned ourselves out of our own reserves, which they should have done, right?
It does not have to do with the crypto bank in Panama and the fact that they have.
No.
No.
No,
We're
who
getting
said no?
clouded here.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're getting clouded. There's a correlation that I want to understand, I think everybody else wants to understand, is there a correlation between, because China has a complete separate payment system and Alibaba and all that stuff, Visa and MasterCard aren't allowed over there, right? Is there a correlation between this platform and that platform?
I
in terms of, in all of it, so settlement, so
Sure.
trading,
But
so all of
I
it.
mean, look, if you've seen at the user application level what they had in China for a while,
Yeah.
you know, instant payments,
Right.
phone to phone, I would say, you know, from their internet giants, right?
Yes.
So, if you will, this is, you know, to your, you know, earlier point, right? This isn't even that really original, right? It's just really the size of the project that is getting people's interest, right? Like, you know, WeChat, Alipay, you know,
Right.
existed for a
But
while.
is there a correlation, you believe, between this?
Correlated in which way? Is that they're following it? I would say yes. Yes.
Quality.
Yes.
I would say.
I mean, a lot of the links say yes.
And so,
Yeah, okay.
Because I think what you're talking about is, are they trying to replicate these digital payment systems that China and the Asian countries have everywhere else in the world? And I think the reason they're starting in a lot of these third world countries is because they don't actually have that payment infrastructure. Like something that actually stood out to me was a month and a half ago, there was that big processing tab collision. And one of the finalists for that, they had this like startup pitch contest, was this startup called Carapay. And what they were saying was that they were going to go into Africa and take transaction times down from, I think currently it's like a day or two, down to 20 minutes. And that was like revolutionary. And they made it to like the final round. And I think that kind of highlights the lack of infrastructure that's in these countries. And so if you have someone like Facebook, where they can provide even instantaneous, almost payment transfers from one to another, that's huge, right? When like 20 minutes is apparently like a big thing. So that's just my perspective.
But think about what Facebook may become. It's killing the retail banks. So that instant transactions, that's one thing, but all the other banking services, like getting a loan in 1 second, because the Facebook has all the information already. Like what's your spending habits, what is the way you work, all the pictures, all your movement around the city. They know everything, so, and they know if you qualify for the loan instantly, instead of going to the back, collecting all the documents back and forth, and just waiting for a month for approval. So I think they're becoming a global bank.
One last question. I know we're a little bit over time, and I know there's so many questions. And you pick a very hot topic, so I blame on you. And,
We'll have to split it somehow.
Yeah.
I'll hang out for a bit. I'll hang out for a bit after that.
So let's assume 5 years from now that Libra is very successful. What would happen to JP Morgan coin, which they're planning to issue? What will happen to XRP, which they promised to be also a payment coin? What do you thought?
You know, I just recently learned JP Morgan and Chase is a agglomeration, a merger of 5 different banks that existed in the 80s, but now it's one bank, right? Because their business model and their overhead is such that they had to survive by merging, right? So let's say Libra's successful and their coin is not. They'll either have to merge with other global banks to survive. It's possible that they'll innovate and do something really kick-ass, but it's very improbable.
Do you think they will use Libra instead?
Here's the thing about crypto, right? It opens up a new whack of business models that we haven't even seen yet. So if there is a path forward and they see it, and if there is really a path forward, I don't know if they actually have the foresight or that like oiled machine to actually take advantage of it quickly. I don't know.
You know, again, super not investment advice, right? But I mean, I would say that I agree that, you know, this Facebook stablecoin is a competitor to other payment coins that are, you know, as I already mentioned, if you use that scale of decentralization, Facebook is arguably more decentralized than some of the payment coins. I'm not going to single any out. Some have been mentioned already, right, on the top 10 list, right? So, you know, in terms of being competitive, competition to them, I completely agree. Yeah, like, clear.
So that's in the current form, the Libra coin uses assets in forms of like fiat currencies to back it up. So JP Morgan will use their own coins to move those assets across borders to back up the Libra coins. I don't think they would use Libra because it's for retail clients.
Okay. I think that's all my question. Please join me in applause for our free candidate.